My spoiled stepsister really thought she'd won, but 3 hours with a sledgehammer proved her wrong. I'm taking this room. Why can't I have it? Michaela, my new stepsister, asked, pointing to my bedroom. I laughed, thinking it was a joke. I'd had that room since I was 5. Mom and I hung the butterfly decals together on the walls before she passed. The guest room's next door, I told her. She turned to Dad with a practiced smile. Pink's my favorite color and I love butterflies. Then she walked straight into my bedroom, running her fingers along my mom's old vanity. This would be perfect for my makeup collection. Please. The guest room barely has any closet space. She looked back at me with that sweet, fake smile and said, "You can consider it your gift to me. New family, new beginnings." I turned to Dad, waiting for him to step in. Say something. Anything. But instead, he pulled me aside and said quietly, "Would you mind giving up your room for your new sister? She really wants it. Tell you what, if you say yes, I'll give you the entire garage. You can decorate it however you want. Move your mom's things there." The garage was nearly 3 times the size of my room, and I'd have the whole floor to myself. I grinned and hugged him. Deal. When Michaela found out I was moving into the garage, she laughed. So you're getting downgraded? Say goodbye to that pink princess room your mom painted. It took me 3 months to turn that dusty garage into something magical. Built-in bookshelves, a cozy reading nook with floor cushions, fairy lights strung across the beams, a desk facing the garden through the new window we installed. I even bought a projector for movie nights and framed a few photos of me, and my friends loved it. People at school talked about the garage room like it was something out of a magazine. But when Michaela saw it, her face went cold. She stormed into our parents' room and started yelling. She gets an entire studio while I'm stuck with a normal bedroom? How's that fair? I'm the new sibling, shouldn't I get the nice things? My stepmom sighed and looked at Dad. Maybe they can switch rooms again, just one last time? But this time, Dad didn't budge. She designed and paid for that garage herself. It's hers. You got the pink room you wanted. End of story. Michaela started to hyperventilate, realizing she'd lost. Then she froze and muttered, "Fine. Keep your stupid garage. I don't need it." We thought that was the end of it, but over the next few weeks, Michaela became obsessed with making her room better. She installed high-end LED strips that synced to music, bought a built-in vanity, even set up a mini bar outside her door. Dad kept swiping his credit card just to keep the peace, but nothing ever seemed good enough for her. She'd drag people upstairs to show off her aesthetic, then get furious when they asked to see my room instead. That's when she decided she needed more space for her creative vision. One Saturday, while we were out celebrating my cousin's graduation, Michaela pretended to be sick and stayed home. She watched from the window as we left, then carried a sledgehammer upstairs. She started knocking down the wall between her pink bedroom and the guest room, trying to make one giant room. The wall came down easily. For about 3 seconds, then the ceiling beam shifted. The neighbors heard a loud crack, like lightning, before the ceiling collapsed. Drywall, insulation, and a massive beam crashed down. Michaela saw it coming, but didn't move in time. The beam hit her at the base of the skull and pinned her. She was conscious the entire time, whispering for help, but we were hours away. By the time neighbors called 911, she'd been trapped for nearly 3 hours. The hospital. The doctor came out after surgery and said the words no one was ready to hear. She'll never move anything below her neck again. 17 years old. A ventilator for life. When she was finally able to speak through the machine, she asked to see me. I thought she wanted comfort. Instead, she rasped, "This is your fault. You made me feel like I had to compete just to belong. Now I'll never paint my nails again. Never hold my phone. Never try on clothes. I just wanted to feel like part of this family." Stepmom blamed us, me and Dad. Why couldn't you just share your room? Why didn't you help her make hers special too? They sealed off the upper floor. Michaela was moved into the garage, my old room, because it was the only space big enough for her medical equipment. I thought that was where it ended, until yesterday. An insurance investigator called. Said they found something strange in Michaela's search history from the week before the accident. Now the case is being reopened, and I'm headed to the police station. The phone rang while I was sitting beside her hospital bed, the same garage where I used to fall asleep watching movies. The ventilator hissed every few seconds, steady as a clock. I picked up. "Hello, this is Mateo Huang from the insurance company," the man said. His voice was calm and professional, the kind of tone people use when they're reading from a script, but trying to sound friendly. He said they'd been doing a routine review of the claim and came across something odd in Michaela's device search history from the week before the accident. My stomach dropped. He explained that they were reopening the case and needed me to come down to the police station that afternoon to answer a few questions. My hands started trembling so badly I almost dropped the phone. I managed to say, "Okay," and wrote down the address, even though I already knew where the station was. After I hung up, I just sat there, staring at Michaela's face. Her eyes were closed, her expression calm, too calm, considering what I'd just heard. I stood up too fast, and the room spun for a second. I in the kitchen. Dad was sipping coffee and Adriana was making toast. I told them about the call. Adriana's face went pale for about 2 seconds before twisting into anger. She demanded to know what I'd said to the insurance company, what lies I'd told to make them suspicious. Her voice got sharper with each word. Dad didn't look up. He just stared into his coffee like it might give him answers. Finally, he said we should cooperate, give them whatever they need. His voice sounded drained, like he'd used up every ounce of energy just surviving the last few weeks. Adriana started to argue again, but Dad raised his hand and she fell silent. I pulled out my phone and texted my best friend that I might need her later, just in case things went sideways. Then I grabbed my jacket from the hook by the door and dug my keys out of my backpack. Driving to the station, I passed my old high school. For a second, I saw the memory play out, me showing off the finished garage to my friends, everyone laughing, the fairy lights glowing against the new window. They'd all said it looked like something straight off Pinterest, the coolest room ever. That memory felt sour now, heavy in my chest. Maybe I had been showing off too much. Maybe that pushed Michaela past some invisible line. I knew that wasn't logical, but the guilt wouldn't let go. When I parked at the station, I turned off the engine and just sat there, breathing slow and shaky. My hands still wouldn't stop trembling. I kept wondering what exactly they'd found, what kind of search history could reopen an accident case. After a few minutes, I forced myself to get out and go inside. The waiting area smelled like stale coffee and floor cleaner. The plastic chairs were hard and uncomfortable. I sat down and tried to piece together the timeline from the day of the collapse. We'd left just after noon for my cousin's graduation. Michaela said she had a headache and wanted to stay home. I remembered her standing at her window, watching us pack the car. Around 4, we got the call from our neighbors, a loud crash, dust pouring from the upstairs windows. Later, the paramedics said Michaela had been pinned for nearly 3 hours before they found her. Conscious the entire time. Terrified, the thought made my stomach twist. 3 hours alone, trapped, realizing something inside her body had gone terribly wrong. The clock on the waiting room wall said 2:15 p.m. I had no idea how long I'd be waiting. About 10 minutes later, a woman walked out and came straight toward me. She introduced herself as Detective Leilani Santos. Her handshake was firm, her eyes kind but serious. She led me down a hallway into a small interview room that smelled faintly of disinfectant and old coffee. The metal table was cold against my fingertips when I brushed it by accident. She explained that this was just an informational interview. I wasn't under arrest, and I wasn't being accused of anything. She said I had the right to have a parent or an attorney present if I wanted. I told her I'd answer on my own. I didn't have anything to hide. At least, I didn't think I did. Detective Santos took out a notebook and asked me to describe the family dynamic before the accident. I tried my best. I told her how Adriana always sided with Michaela no matter what, how Dad tried to keep the peace by giving in to her demands, even when they were unfair. I said I often felt like a guest in my own home after they got married. My voice cracked when I mentioned the butterfly decals, the ones Mom and I had put up together when I was little. Michaela had covered them all with her expensive LED strips that pulsed to music. The detective kept taking notes, face unreadable. She asked when things really started to go bad between us. I told her about the garage deal, how I gave up my bedroom and built the garage into something of my own. And how Michaela grew angrier after she saw it finished. Then she asked about the renovation, how much it cost, how long it took. I explained I'd saved up from my part-time job at the library for 8 months. I bought everything myself, paint, shelves, tools from Home Depot. I did almost all of it alone. Dad helped install the window on weekends since it needed real construction work. The detective wrote something down and asked if we'd gotten permits. My chest tightened. I honestly didn't know. I told her Dad handled that part, or at least I thought he did. She made another note, and my anxiety spiked. Detective Santos turned her tablet toward me, showing a report from Mateo Huang, the insurance investigator. She said routine device checks had revealed suspicious search history on Michaela's laptop from 5 days before the collapse. The list made my blood run cold. How to know if a wall is load-bearing. Sledgehammer demolition interior wall. Can you knock down wall between 2 bedrooms? Home renovation without contractor. Each line felt like a blow. The detective asked if I knew Michaela planned any construction. I said no, she never mentioned it. She only complained her room wasn't big enough to compete with mine. Then she asked me to go over the day of the accident again, what time we left and who knew. I told her we left around noon for the graduation, and Michaela had watched us pack the car from her window. I remembered her pale, unhappy face. Back then, I thought she was just mad about missing the party. Now I wasn't sure. Santos asked who did the electrical work in the garage, the projector, lights, everything. I said Dad handled that too, running new wiring from the main panel. She asked again about permits. I repeated that Dad said he'd take care of all that, but I wasn't sure anymore. She noted it and said the insurance company would need to verify everything was done legally. Then she asked if Michaela ever threatened to damage my garage or tried to destroy it. I said no, just constant complaints about how unfair it was that I had the big space. No fights, just tension. When she asked if Adriana ever suggested Michaela should get the garage, I hesitated but admitted she'd made comments that it wasn't fair one kid got a studio while her daughter had a regular bedroom. She never said it outright, but she implied I was being selfish. Finally, the detective asked what Michaela said at the hospital. I told her how Michaela blamed me, said I made her feel like she had to compete, like she didn't belong. My voice shook as I admitted I'd wondered if she was right. Maybe if I'd shared my room or helped her decorate hers, it wouldn't have happened. When Santos asked if I believed I caused the accident, I said quietly, I don't know anymore. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was selfish. Maybe part of this really was my fault. Detective Santos closed her tablet and said, depending on what the investigation found, there could be legal issues. If Michaela had meant to damage the house, that was one thing. If my garage renovation didn't have permits, that was another. And if anyone had known about her plan, that opened new questions. She explained that insurance fraud and reckless endangerment were serious crimes, even if Michaela only endangered herself. My mouth went dry as I realized she was talking about criminal charges. I asked if Michaela could go to jail. Santos said probably not, given her condition, but there could still be fines and legal trouble for the family. Dad might face charges for unpermitted construction, Adriana if she knew or encouraged the demolition. Then the detective asked if I'd consent to a forensic check of my phone and laptop to confirm I hadn't known about Michaela's plan. I agreed instantly, unlocking both and handing them over. She thanked me, said my devices would be returned within 2 days, and that I was free to go. I walked out of the station at 6 p.m., hands shaking. I sat in my car for a long time, replaying everything she'd said about permits, fraud, and blame. I texted Dad that the interview was over and intense. He replied an hour later with just, okay. No questions. No concern. When I got home, I stayed in the driveway, staring at the glowing garage windows. The place I'd once been proud of now felt like evidence of something I shouldn't have built. The next morning, while I poured cereal, Dad's phone rang. I watched his face pale as he listened. When he hung up, he told us to sit down. Mateo Huang, the insurance investigator, had found more searches on Michaela's phone. How long does an insurance claim take? Does homeowners insurance cover accidental demolition? What happens if you damage a house without a permit? Adriana burst into tears, saying Michaela was just a kid, that she hadn't understood. But Dad's expression said otherwise. Later, Mateo emailed a follow-up report. 2 days before the collapse, Michaela had searched, "Can you get in trouble for knocking down wrong wall? Structural damage insurance payout average." And on the day of the accident, how to fake being sick convincingly. Best excuses to skip family event. It was all planned. She'd pretended to be sick so we'd leave her alone, to demolish the wall in secret. Reading those searches made me feel hollow. This hadn't been a careless mistake. Michaela had calculated everything, the risks, the insurance, even the timing. That afternoon, I sat in my car in the library parking lot where I used to work, trying to process the weight of it all. Away from the house. Away from everyone. Yes, Michaela had planned everything, researched, prepared, and believed she'd just knock down a wall and have a cooler room by the time we got home. She probably imagined us being impressed, not horrified. She didn't plan for the ceiling to collapse or to end up paralyzed. I couldn't decide if knowing she planned it made it better or worse. Around 7 that evening, while I was still in the parking lot, Detective Santos called. The neighbors had remembered something new. 2 days before the accident, a delivery truck dropped off a package, and they'd seen Michaela sign for it herself. When I told Dad, he checked his order history, no tools, no sledgehammer. Santos said this confirmed what they suspected. Michaela had ordered it herself, likely using someone else's card. It showed clear preparation, not a sudden outburst. The same neighbor also described hearing loud music that day, then rhythmic pounding that went on for 2 hours before a massive crash shook their house. They'd almost gone over to check but didn't. I pictured Michaela swinging that sledgehammer for hours, taking breaks, starting again. No one stopping her until the ceiling gave way. 2 days later, Santos called again. This time, she'd found charges on Adriana's credit card, the vanity, LED strips, and the sledgehammer, all from the same hardware store. Adriana went pale, insisting she hadn't approved the hammer purchase, that Michaela must have used her card without permission. Dad's expression hardened. He was clearly questioning how much Adriana really knew. Then the detective showed us messages between them from a week before the accident. Adriana had texted, "You need to make it impossible for them to ignore how unfair this is." Michaela replied, "I have a plan." The thread continued with complaints about me getting everything while Michaela got leftovers, along with screenshots of room designs she said she deserved. Adriana broke down crying, saying she only meant redecorating, not demolition. Detective Santos said calmly that while Adriana might not have known the full plan, the messages encouraged Michaela to escalate. They created an atmosphere where Michaela felt justified in taking extreme action because her mom told her she deserved more. Sitting there, listening to everything, I started remembering things differently. Adriana had always pushed Dad to spend more on Michaela's room, saying she deserves to feel equal. You can't let one daughter have everything while the other has nothing. Back then, I thought she was just being protective. Now I saw how she fueled Michaela's resentment, feeding the idea that I was the enemy. She never told Michaela to be grateful or stop comparing. She kept score, turning us into rivals. Anger burned in my chest because she'd helped create this whole mess by validating Michaela's jealousy. On day 4 of the investigation, a woman named Heidi Klein, a structural engineer, arrived with a clipboard and a serious expression. She inspected the upstairs damage for hours before calling us into the living room. The wall Michaela had knocked down, she explained, was load-bearing, essential to supporting the second floor. Removing it without support beams caused the ceiling to collapse. She showed the original 1987 blueprints, proving it was structural, not decorative. When she asked about permits, Dad admitted he hadn't gotten any, assuming interior changes didn't need them. Heidi said firmly that demolishing a wall absolutely required city approval. Then she toured the house and stopped in my garage. She noticed the window Dad and I installed and asked if we had a permit. He didn't. Heidi noted it down, explaining that even small exterior openings need inspection. We'd now face fines for both violations, the upstairs demolition and the unpermitted window. Dad just nodded, defeated. A few days later, a hospital social worker named Royce Booker visited to assess Michaela's home care setup. He was kind and calm, checking the ventilator, feeding tube supplies, and bed arrangement. Afterward, he gently said this situation wasn't sustainable long-term without nursing help. Adriana snapped that we were doing our best without money or support. Royce reassured her he was there to help connect us with services, then left. After he was gone, I heard Adriana crying in the kitchen. Between sobs, she said she'd lost her beautiful bedroom and now lived in what felt like a hospital. Then she looked at me, eyes red, and said bitterly, "The garage was supposed to be your punishment, to teach you can't always get what you want." Instead, the garage became Michaela's prison, the only space big enough for her medical equipment. The room meant to humble me would now hold her for life. I stood there, glass in hand, not knowing whether to comfort Adriana or walk away. She was still turning everything into my punishment. I left quietly, my chest tight.